For those of you joining for the first time, our series is called Leadership COGS. And today, again, marks the beginning of International Coaching Week. I'm just going to take a step back and share a little bit more about me. After years as a Fortune 100 global leader in financial services and in consulting, I realized that there was a gap. There was a gap in my understanding. I'm a first gen. I studied systems engineering and I was trained in business, in process, and in technology. But my difference in culture really caused me to struggle and struggle with unwritten rules that tend to help the best leaders and the best teams to thrive. So 12 years ago, I used what I knew, I studied, and I got coached to fill some of those gaps. And that led me to launching the Lenserf Group. And in that time, we've helped thousands of leaders and countless teams in more than 44 countries to soar past their limitations. And that body of work led to COGS, or leadership COGS is what I call it now. And essentially, that is when evaluated regularly, when leaders do these four things, they can stay in a state of high performance. So, what are the COGS? C is for celebrating consistency, which is a key attribute of high performance. O is for taking ownership of not only your being, but also your actions. G is for growing. We all encounter glue periodically where there are things that feel as if they're bigger than who we are in that moment. S is the stamina to stretch in spite of that glue, to stretch into next in spite of that discomfort. And if any of you are able to stretch out your arms or stretch your legs, you might feel a little bit of a pull. And that's what the S is. When we feel that pull and we're pulled into whatever version of ourselves is to come next. So today, our focus is on something that I don't tend to talk about very often. It's what gets the cog moving in the first place. I'm just going to share this story with you. Uh, you know, in my career, I encountered a lot of turbulence as I, was ascending whatever ladder I was ascending. I can remember once being passed up for a promotion, and when that happened, it hurt. It hurt a lot, and for a long time, I did everything that I thought I was supposed to do and more. I worked long hours, I formed relationships, I made sure that my leader was well prepared and kept aware. I said yes, and I delivered on time. All of this stuff. And I wondered what was going wrong. I blamed the organization and I blamed organizational politics. And I sought the support of a coach only after I banged my head against the wall and was getting nowhere. So this coach and the coaching methods helped me realize that I could find a key that might unlock my cog. And it was this objective insight that I had. And when I saw it, I was like, wow, I see a different tier of myself. And you guys might be asking, like, okay, well, what does that experience feel like? If you haven't been coached before, it doesn't sound like, okay, well, what does it mean to experience such a great aha? And I'd like to take you on what I tend to call a leadership flight. If you've ever flown, and I hope you guys have had the opportunity to be in an airplane at some point before, if you can imagine that you are the pilot on a plane. I know there's a lot going on with planes right now, so I apologize for using this analogy, but it is called our leadership flight. And you've invited me or another certified coach along to sit with you in that cockpit. And before you take off, a few important things happen. You may have to conduct an assessment just to make sure all the controls are where they need to be, or to baseline where we're starting from. So in a coaching experience, this same baseline might happen through an assessment. You may also have to do a safety check to make sure that you're freely able to express yourself in your environment. So many times when people come to coaching, they might take the call from their office, and on the call, they might be whispering, or if there's a live coach in their office, the walls are thin. So they're like, and then I went. And when you are closed, You are also closing a part of your brain that needs to be accessed in a good coaching relationship. So, part of the safety check is to make sure that you're freely able to express yourself in your physical environment. A final check before you take off with a coach is that of confidentiality. A certified coach is held to ethical standards, and those ethical standards state that whatever you share should not be shared any further. And you have the opportunity to discuss those parameters with your coach. And after that, only then do you take off. And when you take off, you and your coach get a macro view of you. Everything that is you, the family you, the friend you, the hobby you, the work you. And the two of you get to evaluate whatever traffic might exist for you. What are those things that are standing in your way at any given point in time? And you set the agenda, you set the direction, you set the goals for your work with that coach. Once you set the goals, then you take off in that coaching experience and you get to explore those limiting beliefs, some of the challenges that you might not even see that are in your path, but your coach all the time is with you, navigating those challenges with you, asking for asking interesting questions that perhaps sometimes may help you realize that you have a boundary, that you have a fence post, that there may be assumptions that you make that may not be true for everyone. And in those situations, you have the opportunity to ask your coach, hey, is that true for me or is that true for everyone? And your coach gets to say, huh, is it true for you or is it true for everyone? And if the answer is it's not true for everyone, chances are you have a limiting belief. One thing that I love to say is that in no situation is your partnership with a coach meant to push you beyond your values or beyond more than 10% beyond your comfort zone, because the intention of working or partnering with a coach is never to push you over the edge, never to push you over the edge. So, what does that experience feel like? Well, this is what it feels like. You may start the engagement with a coach, setting big goals, raising your awareness, building tools for self management, building your self management. You might move on to learning new habits and practicing those habits. And towards the end of a coaching relationship, what you might notice is you're starting to apply those same habits elsewhere. And sometimes building self awareness and self management may not feel comfortable. But what typically happens in coaching is you build a tier of comfort for yourself because you realize the power that is unlocked inside of you. What else? I'll come back to confidentiality because I don't take this lightly at all. So, working with a coach, sometimes people work in person and you can control the environment a little closer. But when working remotely with a coach, you may encounter, Zoom or something else. And you have the opportunity to set boundaries around what that experience is like for you. You may choose to use meeting notes, to record your sessions, to have transcription put on, to capture notes in another way. But I would urge you to ask these questions of your coach. How will my data be stored? How will my data be held in your confidence? We use a HIPAA compliant coach management system to make sure that anything that happens is held within the confines of our system and not subject to your systems at work, where anybody can read those emails, anybody can read those insights should something confidential be shared. So I just double click on the confidentiality because a coaching relationship is one where you don't want that information going further in order for you to be fully present. So I'm going to move on to this. This is a really, really dense slide, and I could even stop sharing. And I welcome your questions should you have any as I go through. I'm going to talk about 5 things that might typically go or pass into your realm of consciousness as you start to think about coaching and how you can either lean in as a coach or lean in to better coach to be coached or engage this external support of a coach. First is I just went through the coaching experience, meaning what you experience should you decide to work with someone. The second, I want to talk to the signs that you might benefit from this kind of support. Independent of if you're a rising leader, if you're an executive leader, if you're working for a company or a business entity or a government, there may be times when you might feel like you're hitting a plateau, meaning you're doing the right things, but new things are not manifesting as a result of that. And in some instances, you might even be getting bored with your work. And when you're bored, you show up differently. In those instances, you might also start getting feedback that you either don't agree with or you just don't understand. And in those times, just like I faced after I was passed up for that promotion, there was feedback that I didn't quite understand. So it was a sign that I could have used other support. In other instances, leaders might be navigating some kind of a transition, or they might want to influence more effectively. The longer you exist in your career, the greater the requirement tends to be that you influence others to understand your line of thinking, to understand the work that you're doing, or simply to get them on board to do their own work if you're a leader. I tend to work with a lot of pioneering leaders who are at the top of their game. And because they're at the top of their game and a lot of what they're charged with working on has never been done before, and they may feel alone. And because they feel alone, coaching is a great, great, great power move to reduce that sense of being lonely and an only. You get thought partnership to support you in seeing what's in front of you. Oh, another reason, and likely the last I'll talk about today, on why you might know that you could use some kind of help is if you're experiencing stress, burnout, or decision fatigue, and you're just not coming into your Monday. Today is Monday. You're not coming into your Mondays with the same restoration, the same energy that you know you used to come into your weeks with. That might be a sign that you can use this kind of support. So what are the options with support? Well, there are several different kinds of coaching programs. There are traditional one-on-one coaching programs, and while they tend to be slightly more costly, they'll likely allow you to focus on exactly what is important to you in this moment. And just like I talked about before, they'll likely begin with some kind of an assessment to provide you with insight into your patterns of leadership or your existence in the world. Like, how are you showing up for your family? How are you showing up when you're in the office with your colleagues? There are lots of different kinds of programs. There's executive coaching programs. There are leadership coaching programs for rising leaders. There's career coaching programs where you may be navigating a career change. Like we know that's happening right now in the US and around the world, where roles are shifting and people are shifting their skill sets to match the demands of the job market. And in those instances, they may opt for a career coaching program. There's also performance coaching. And in performance coaching, it's focused on boosting productivity, hitting goals, and removing blocks to performance. And sometimes we may not know those blocks, but other members of our organization see those blocks and they experience those blocks when we show up in the workplace and perhaps we're caustic or we're too agreeable. And by being agreeable and saying yes to everything, it's causing pain for your team that's overwhelmed and overloaded. So performance coaching can support you in noticing those habits so that you have an opportunity to make a decision, a different decision. There's also resilience coaching, and resilience coaching supports burnout, recovery, again, stress management. A lot of time that sounds like emotional intelligence training. And some of these programs are one on one. And there's also programs that tend to be more cost effective, and they're group programs or one to many. And what we know is that individuals are 500% more likely to achieve their goals when they do so or pursue those goals with good company. So those team or group programs tend to be very, very successful for that reason. Another question you might have is, how do you select a coach? I'm just going to spit out a couple criteria. I am not telling you exactly how to select your coach, but should you have the questions, there are a couple things that you can consider. One, your coach should be certified, and a certification is different than just a credential. So they should be certified by a certification authority that holds standards for that certification. Your coach should be trained. Coaching is an occupation just like any other, and there are standards. So your coach is a trusted partner and for many leaders. So if you're just looking at someone saying, "Oh, I think you could be my coach," there could be instances where they are subject to influence you in a way that it may not be of your own volition. It may not be what you're calling forward. So that's something to look out for. How is your coach, or how is a prospective coach certified? What experience and what training do they have? Your goal is to increase your performance in some way. So you want to make sure that your coach, if they don't have that formal training, that they've had life experience, either an executive role or some senior role in HR where they have had that responsibility for coaching others. You want to make sure that your coach has put in the repetitions to do the work and do the work with you so that you can achieve your best result. The other thing is experience and background. I don't want to diminish that. Again, experience, perhaps that's important for you, that they understand some part of your experience, or that their experience in some capacity might have been similar to yours. That's not a requirement, but it is something that many consider. Another thing that many consider is chemistry and trust. In coaching, you're never looking for advice, because advice is not necessarily coaching. That tends to be more of a mentoring relationship when all you're looking for is advice. In coaching, you're actively taking steps to serve your future impact. So the O in COGS, which is ownership, you're going for ownership for your results. You want to put your thumbprint, not that of somebody else, your thumbprint on your results. So it's very, very important that you can trust your coach. And when you would work with their coach, that you can ensure that that coach is going to coach you on your agenda and the thing that you're pursuing, and not the thing that they want you to pursue, because that's not coaching anymore. The other thing is the coaching approach. So I said the coach's agenda versus your own. That might be construed as directive. Is your coach directive? Like, hey, you must do this. Or is your coach non-directive? Like, I noticed that you're off in this way. What do you want to do about it? There are different kinds of approaches that coaches can take. Some of them might take a mindset approach. So we all know that if your mind is not in the game, and the game is whatever element of your life that you're focused on, chances are you are not showing up at your best, and you're not feeling that great about that part of your life. And as a result, you may demonstrate certain behaviors, and those behaviors indicate what you're thinking. Or sometimes you might put systems in place or not put systems in place that stand in your way. So coaches can focus on one, like mindset, or there could be behavioral coaches, or there could be systems coaches that support you in building better systems. One coach can also do all three, but know that there is a difference, and your experience in the coaching will be different depending on your coach's approach. Another thing to consider is, how is your coach trained? So are they trained on research-backed frameworks or assessments like Hogan or Positive Intelligence or Clifton Strengths or many, many others? Or are they simply just showing up and coaching? And not to reduce the importance, or not to diminish the approach of simply showing up and going with what is. I've coached at conferences and just took whatever clients are showing up for 15 minutes where we're doing laser coaching. And that can totally happen. But before you go in, align your goals with the strengths of the coach. That's very helpful when you're able to do that. Next up, results and references. Your coach should have some kind of reference for you to read, to understand, to see, to watch a video, whatever that is, that can support you in making your best decision to move forward or not move forward. And lastly, I'll just throw this out there: identity and values. It's not an imperative for your coach to have identical values as you, but your coach should never judge you because of your values or for really any other reason. So you want to consider a coach who's able to challenge you sufficiently with nuance and with care, and not with judgment. It should never feel like judgment. You want to be challenged with nuance and with care, not with judgment. The last thing, coaching is not free, and chances are, if it is free, just ask yourself why. If I'm looking to become my best self or optimize, and it's a profession, very rarely are you ever able to go to a doctor for free, or get an electrician to come to your home, or a plumber, or any other professional advice for free. So just ask that question. So how can you finance the support? I encourage you to ask your company, or find out if there's some type of professional development or learning budget. Many, many, many firms have this. Coaching can absolutely help you to improve your leadership effectiveness, to enhance your team performance. And many, many employers nowadays are realizing the benefit of having their employees go through processes that support them in making their own decisions, that support them in leading with greater confidence, going through experiences where they don't feel wronged. Many employers also have learning stipends that you can use for courses or conferences or coaching. There are wellness programs that might subsidize your investment in yourself. And if you're an entrepreneur, you may be able to even consider tax deductible options for coaching. But I encourage you to work with your accountant to find out all the details there. I'm talking a lot about individual programs, but there are group programs, and I mentioned this briefly before. And those programs tend to be a little bit more affordable. And we know that the success comes from learning from one another and feeling like you're not doing it alone. So I see that we're nearly at the end of our time together today. And I just would love it if you reach out if you want coaching, or you need help in asking for help, either financing the support for yourself or for your team, or simply if you have additional questions. I just grazed the surface of all that is involved with getting engaged and ready and moving forward with a coach. But this week, I'm going to be talking about coaching all week. And if there are other topics that you'd like to learn more about as it relates to coaching, I'm happy to serve as your resource. Should you be ready to take a next step? You showed up today. I'd love to know why. Should you be ready to take your next step? We have a leadership coaching cohort starting in June. I'd be happy to take you on. But I'm grateful that you joined today. I'm going to be back next Monday on May 19th for another episode of Leadership COGS, where we're going to be talking about metrics. So in leadership, it's so important to know what your metrics are. You can't manage what you don't measure. Thanks again for being here, and take care and be well.